I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. President Trump suggested today that a crackdown on extreme content in the U.S. could help stop school shootings. He spoke at a meeting with state and local lawmakers inside the Roosevelt Room.
You are having movies come out that are so violent with the killing and everything else that maybe that's another thing we're going to have to discuss.
Earlier today, the president tweeted his praise of NRA executives. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is reviewing whether it has the authority to regulate bump stocks without action from Congress. President Trump asked the DOJ this week to ban rapid-fire devices like those used in last year's massacre in Las Vegas. A ban could start a legal battle with gun makers. And former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort and his former deputy Rick Gates were indicted for a second time. The new charges include failing to report income to tax authorities and bank fraud. The move could put additional pressure on them to cooperate with the special investigation. The late Reverend Billy Graham will be brought to the U.S. Capitol next Wednesday, where he will lie in honor in the rotunda until Thursday, March 1st. Graham died yesterday at the age of 99. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti, and this is Bloomberg.
Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, earnings season continues. We'll break down the results at HP Enterprise and HP Inc. just ahead. Plus, another SpaceX rocket blasts off into outer space. How this launch brings Elon Musk's vision of faster internet one step closer to reality. And a Bloomberg scoop, we lay out the game plan and the upgrades on tap for Apple's next generation AirPods. But first, to our lead. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and HP Inc. reporting earnings after the bell. HPE boosted its full-year forecast, beating estimates, and HP Inc. topped estimates with strong computer and printer sales in the holiday shopping quarter, maintaining its momentum even as the industry stagnates. For more, I want to bring in Crawford Del Prete, Chief Research Officer at IDC. So, Crawford, what do you think is driving these results?
Yeah, there are a few things driving these results, so we have to sort of unpack them, because for a long time, HP talked about being better together, and clearly this quarter, they were better apart. I think you have two companies that have a stronger ability to be nimble, a stronger ability to resize their infrastructure, particularly in the case of HPE. Now, in the case of HPI, the PC and printer company, this is a company that is performing just really on all cylinders. They are in a market that is flat for PCs, that is nominally flat for printing. They are gaining share. They're putting up numbers like 15% growth year over year for total PCs, putting up 14% growth for total printing, 28% growth for for commercial printing. But now remember, that includes the Samsung business that they acquired, and this is the first full quarter that they had that. But really just stellar performance and huge operational efficiency on the part of HPI.
Let's talk about that. Are you expecting these strong computer and printer demand to continue through this year?
Yeah, so I think what you're seeing is that infrastructure in general is continuing to get refreshed. But in the case of HPI, the product is strong. The product has been getting stronger and stronger for quite some time. So in the case of PCs, they're focusing on profit pools that are margin rich, whether that's detachable 2-in-1s, so things that, like a Microsoft Surface-like device, or whether that in the desktop is things like gaming. And then they've done a great job of kind of meeting the needs of that really important, most demanding consumer and commercial buyer, and getting them to pay up a premium for incremental features. These things can be relatively small, like integrated privacy screens, integrated Skype calling, and just really high-quality build. So I do think the Hewlett-Packard can continue to gain share. Now, the PC market, we expect that's going to be nominally a flat market going forward.
Now, Meg Whitman, no longer the CEO of HPE. She's gone on to her next endeavor. Antonio Neri, the new CEO, he's speaking on the call. He's talking about the macro environment, saying he thinks he sees market improvement. But what is your outlook for HPE, without Meg Whitman?
Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to talk to Antonio just before he hopped on the call. And, obviously he's really, really thrilled with the performance that the company had in the quarter. I think that the HPE you're going to see without Meg Whitman is going to run a very, very similar playbook. They're looking for acquisition targets that are additive to the profit pools they participate in and that are in growing segments that fit within HPE's channel and in their direct sales force. And remember that 70% of HPE's revenue comes from indirect channels, from resellers. So they have a vast reseller network that they can leverage. I think that the key to this quarter is twofold. And Antonio, is very clear about this. They have enabled HPE Next, which took $1.5 billion out of the company for this year, of which they invested $700 million back. So they did huge cost cutting while growing the top line. That's pretty impressive, and not something that any company is going to want to go through going forward. But they've set themselves up with a smaller overhead structure to now participate in larger areas of the enterprise market, like the intelligent edge with Aruba, like HPC with Silicon Graphics. So they're seeing the benefit of companies repatriating cash, operating in a lower tax environment. They're seeing infrastructure spend ramp up. And I think you're going to see that at companies like HPE. You're going to see it, you saw it at Cisco. You'll see it at other enterprise companies going forward, because companies have to upgrade their infrastructure. Not everything is moved to the cloud.
Tax reform, already a big topic on these conference calls. How do you think tax reform is going to impact both of these companies?
Yeah, so it's clearly going to impact both these companies. They're both telegraphing lower tax rates, in both cases somewhere in the mid-teens range, and that's down from the low 20s historically. And they're also, they're not mentioning absolute dollar amounts, but you look at HPE, they're talking about returning $7 billion to shareholders. That's going to come to some degree, to probably a very large degree, from offshore cash that they bring back. As well, they're talking about, in the case of HPI, beyond the executives participating in their incentive plan. In HPE's case, they're talking about increasing the 401k match and also having employees participate and be able to participate in different bonus pools associated with them bringing this money back. So, again, I think that in general, these companies are trying to acknowledge that it is a favorable environment from a tax standpoint. It's also a favorable environment from a demand standpoint. And you got to strike while the iron's hot. And for the first time in a long time, HPE has the ability to execute and the products to take advantage, which is, again, a place they haven't been over the last few years with all the divestments and whatnot.
On that note, the cloud is rapidly expanding, but still hotly contested. How well positioned is HPE to compete in the cloud, or this, hybrid cloud future that Meg Whitman talked about?
Yeah, so HPE was very, very clear that in this tier one data center business, that they don't view it as a very high calorie business. It wasn't a significant margin pool for them, and they've decommitted to that business. So that part of their server business is an area where you're not going to see HP selling a lot of servers to Amazon or to Google or to even Microsoft based on their strategy now. What they're doing is they're participating in the cloud in a number of ways. They're selling hybrid IT, which means selling gear to enterprises that are going to have a mix of on-premise and cloud-based offerings. They're also selling enterprise gear to a number of SaaS providers that will use that gear to host their own cloud implementations. And then they're selling to service providers all over the world. And this is back to that 70% of their revenue that goes through resellers. There's many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands of service providers all over the world that Hewlett-Packard Enterprise will sell to and participate in the cloud. And those service providers will host Amazon and Microsoft instances. So, there are multiple ways for HPE to participate, but they're not going to do it in those tier one suppliers because, quite frankly, they couldn't make any money doing it.
All right, Crawford Del Pret, IDC Research, thank you so much. Crawford, as always, for weighing in. We'll keep listening to these calls. Well, Finnish firm Rovio saw its stock plunge over 50% in the trading session. Investors rapidly dumped the stock after the maker of Angry Birds missed estimates in its latest earnings results. Rovio also gave 2018 guidance that one analyst called a huge disappointment. Coming up, Elon Musk just launched his fourth rocket this year, this time filled with 3 satellites. Why the tech giant wants in on broadband next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. Listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Justin Bachman, and I cover commercial space for Bloomberg News. The Trump administration wants to cut the red tape for space entrepreneurs. The National Space Council used its second formal meeting on Wednesday at Kennedy Space Center in Florida to discuss ways to revamp U.S. rules pertaining to the commercial use of space. Among the recommendations being considered, a single license for all space launches and re-entry, regardless of the location or type of vehicle being flown. The goal is to streamline an approval process that has been criticized as overly cumbersome in an era when a new cast of space players is developing ambitious plans for new space enterprises. Some of the high-profile players include SpaceX from Elon Musk, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic, Sierra Nevada, and Blue Origin, the rocket company Amazon founder Jeff Bezos launched nearly 20 years ago. Trump revived the Space Council last June and directed Vice President Mike Pence to lead it. This week, the Council also announced a 29-person users advisory group to foster greater cooperation and coordination among government and private space players. You can find me on Twitter at Justin Bachman and follow TikTok on Twitter as well for all your news.
Sticking with space, a SpaceX rocket carrying 3 satellites roared into space today from the California coast. The Falcon 9 destroyed a Spanish imaging satellite. It also carried 2 smaller test satellites for a system that aims to provide internet access to the more remote corners of the Earth. Joining us now from New York, Space Angels CEO Chad Anderson, who attended the National Space Council meeting on Wednesday down in Florida. Space Angels is the leading source of capital for space startups. So, Chad, first of all, look, we talked a couple of weeks ago with the last launch. These now are becoming routine, but they are actually really important when it comes forward to moving forward space technology. What is significant about this particular launch?
Hi, Emily. Yeah, that's exactly right. This particular launch is exciting for a few reasons. One, it carried 2 of the test satellites for their new mega constellation. It's going to have 4,000 plus satellites delivering communications to the Earth. And so this is important for a few reasons. One, it's going to connect the other 3 billion, like you mentioned. It's going to give people options to their current cable providers. And most importantly, SpaceX is still going to Mars. So this is going to be a key piece in their financial architecture that's going to get them there.
Talking about this effort to bring internet access, fast internet access to the farthest corners of the world, this is something that other, internet entrepreneurs haven't shied away from, like Mark Zuckerberg with internet.org. Google has Project Loon. How is what Elon Musk is doing different?
Satellites provide an alternative and a way to deliver these communication services that go beyond the UAV-based and balloon-based things that we've seen previously. So typically, these communication satellites are in geostationary orbit. That's very high up over a particular point on Earth. These 4,000 satellites are going to be much closer to the Earth. And which gives you a smaller distance that the signal needs to carry. And so this is going to be incredibly fast broadband connection to the farthest reaches of the planet, on par with new communications innovations coming online like 5G.
Each of these launches, also there are new learnings and progress when it comes to rocket reusability. What did we see happen here today?
Yeah, so this was very cool to see. SpaceX just continues to push boundaries and keep us all interested, right? Even in the shuttle and Apollo years, we saw viewership start to fall off, and it's because people really want to see what's coming next, what progress are we making, what are we doing next, and SpaceX just continues to push the envelope. Today, the fairings that shield the payload, the satellites, came back to Earth, and they attempted to catch them with a giant net on a boat. And while they missed, they came really close, and it seems like they've got a good plan to catch them next time.
All right. You were also at the National Space Council meeting. I know they talked about space entrepreneurship, and there's a move towards the future of space travel as a commercial rather than a government endeavor. You know, what kind of progress are you seeing there?
That's exactly right. And so it was good to be in the room yesterday to hear the conversations. And it's really good to hear the emphasis on streamlining regulation and licensing. They've moved a lot of space operations and space oversight into the Department of Commerce, which is another key signal that the future of space is commercial. And yeah, I mean, the overarching focus in that meeting was really about space entrepreneurship and how the government can continue to partner with them as a customer of services rather than a benefactor or funding the development of new systems.
What is the mood given the messaging coming from President Trump about turning space into the next free market paradise?
Well, we're certainly all been working towards that for the last few years, so it's good to hear the government getting on board with that message. And I think the data is starting to back up the story here in a major way, and we've kind of reached a tipping point where the government's really started to sit up and pay attention.
And what are, you know, we've talked about this in the past, but as space becomes more commercial, what are the sort of safety concerns, the regulatory concerns that you expect to see pop up?
Well, there's a great one with the SpaceX launch today that we can talk about. I mean, they've got three key challenges. One is the FCC licenses for spectrum. It's a scarce resource, and how you send radio frequency down to Earth, and then how you bring this unprecedented amount of data back down to Earth, and then also how do you navigate the ever increasingly crowded highways in space, right? Space is very big, but a lot of the key orbits are in demand, and so how do you monitor all these things? They provide a lot of opportunities for startups, and we're seeing startups addressing each one of these concerns with laser communications to bypass the radio frequency spectrum. New ground stations that are allowing you to steer them electronically. You can do them for much smaller and much less upfront cost. And in debris tracking, we're seeing companies come in and really do this in a way that we've never seen before, and at a cost point that we've never seen before, being able to track 2-centimeter objects and really give us a lot more situational awareness in space.
Okay, Chad Anderson, Space Angels CEO, thanks so much, as always, for breaking it down for us and talking about what's important. Okay, Robinhood's 4 million users can start trading Bitcoin and Ethereum today, commission-free. The California-based firm is offering the service in California, Massachusetts, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire. Robinhood, which first gained traction with a free stock trading app, hopes to offer cryptocurrency trading in most states by mid-year. Coming up, a Bloomberg scoop, Apple is seeking to bolster its wearables business. The upgrades coming to its popular AirPods headphones. Next, this is Bloomberg. Apple is seeking to bolster its wearables business. The tech giant working on upgrades to its AirPods wireless headphones. According to people familiar with the matter, a new person with an upgraded wireless chip could be released this year, and by early next year, there could be a version that is water resistant. Joining us now, who else but our Bloomberg tech reporter, Mark Gurman, who brought us this scoop. So what are the new features going to be?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So exciting. AirPods, a lot of people are liking them.
People love them.
They're becoming sort of a secret smash hit for Apple. 2 new versions, one with deeper Siri integration, so you can put them in your ears and sort of say, "Hey Siri." I might light up a bunch of people's phones now, but I think I actually just heard yours go off.
It is going off. Okay.
Yeah, so that functionality is going to be there with the AirPods, and there's going to be a water-resistant model coming about a year after in 2019.
So has the issue of charging these headphones become a problem for users?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, I noticed that the battery life is not exactly the 5 hours that you get. So if you go like on a long run, I feel like you're going to need to recharge up the case.
Right, or on a flight
afterwards, or on a flight. But in day-to-day use, let's say I'm in the office and I just want to listen to music maybe for 30 minutes at a time, I can take a few calls, I can see it lasting the full week. So it really varies by use case.
What do you think it is about them that makes them such a hit?
Yeah, you know, I think it's that charging case and the wireless capabilities and the convenience. I mean, it's really small. Like, I always have mine in my pocket. I actually don't have them in my pocket right now, so I take that back. But I typically have them in my pocket. It's very good for taking phone calls. If you want to step outside, take a call in the office, just listen to music in and out. And it doesn't really have the need to put wires in and out of your phone, your ears. So that is a convenience factor that is definitely there.
And there was a time when the wait was weeks to get a new pair. How are they doing on supply?
You know, that's actually another undertold story, I think, about the AirPods. It really took them a while to reach supply-demand balance in terms of demand for it. Does that mean there were so many more people wanting these things than Apple expected? Were they harder to manufacture? We'll have to find out. Thanks for the extra work. But you know that now these days you can pretty much walk into any Apple store and Best Buy and find one.
They're not cheap. But they're obviously not, the highest ticket item in the Apple Store. How much money do they actually make on AirPods?
That's a good question. So the AirPods are a really key component of this new other products division, which encompasses the AirPods, the HomePod, the Apple TV, the iPad stylus, a few other accessories. And that division also has wearables within it, which includes the Apple Watch, the Beats headphones, and the AirPods. And the CFO of Apple, Luca Maestri, told us on the earnings call that part of the division grew 70% year over year. So clearly the AirPods combined with the Apple Watch are making an impact on Apple's bottom line, which is why we're following this category very closely.
And, given the upcoming iPhone launch, again, later this year, how are the new AirPods going to interact with the new phone?
Right, it's just joining that in that story where they like to update individual product lines, the major ones, year after year. But now we're seeing the AirPods becoming part of that update cycle, which means that this product is something that's clearly more important to them than some may have figured it was when it was first announced as an accessory a couple years ago.
All right, Mark Gurman, our Apple reporter, thank you,
Thanks.
As always, for that scoop. Coming up, we explore the investment strategy behind Citigroup venture capital arm and how it wants to shake up the startup scene. That's next. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Here's a check of your first word news. President Trump offered his full support of the NRA today as the organization began an offensive against efforts to tighten gun restrictions. In a tweet, the president praised its chief executives, calling them great American patriots. Trump also proposed a bonus for teachers who train to carry guns in U.S. classrooms. Meantime, NRA Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre says gun control supporters are using the mass shooting to promote an anti-gun agenda. LaPierre spoke today in Maryland at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference. He also echoed the president's suggestion about expanding the security presence in U.S. schools. UK Prime Minister Theresa May gathered her senior cabinet ministers at Chequers today for a marathon meeting to find common ground on Brexit. Chequers is the Prime Minister's country retreat outside London. May's Conservative government is divided between supporters who want a clean break with the EU and those seeking closer ties. A bipartisan delegation of U.S. senators is in the Middle East, where tensions have increased since the U.S. recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And at the UN and in the Arab world, many believe the declaration means the U.S. has forfeited its role as a peace mediator. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. here in Washington. It is already 6:30 Friday morning in Hong Kong. We are joined by Bloomberg's Sophie Kamarudin with a look at the markets. Sophie, good morning and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday, Alicia, but a not so happy February, which is shaping up to be a painful month for global stocks and emerging equities. They fell the most in 2 weeks, but don't put the blame on China. And after that surge that we saw in mainland stocks up 2% on Wednesday, watch to see if the post-holiday cheer will continue this Friday. Now, the big highlight, of course, in Asian data is Japanese inflation. The headline figure likely rose on higher food prices, but the core gauge probably slowed, underscoring the challenge posed by a stronger yen, which is standing tall against most G10 peers, pushing the euro-yen cross down and the dollar snapping a 4-day rally then, also as treasuries rose while U.S. stocks were mixed. You have the Aussie dollar holding above 78 U.S. cents, but one of Australia's largest money managers is wagering the currency will slide this year. And oil trading near a 2-week high following a surprise drop in U.S. supplies. In Hong Kong, I'm Sophie Kamarudin. Up next, more with Bloomberg Technology.
Technology, I'm Emily Chang. Citigroup is a financial powerhouse as the fourth largest bank in the United States. But within the walls of the company is Citi Ventures, its VC arm and a new incubator for internal startups called D10X. So can it compete with Silicon Valley VC stalwarts that have been around for decades and find the next big breakthrough tech startups? Vanessa Colella, head of Citi Ventures and Citi's chief innovation officer, joins us here along with Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang. Thank you so much for stopping by. So let's talk about the purpose of Citi's VC arm. Are you looking to, buy, build, partner with these companies?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me. We think it's really important at Citi that we're constantly focused on bringing the outside in. How do we make sure that we stay involved in cutting-edge developments? And so much of that is being present where entrepreneurs are present, and not just working with them, but helping them to scale their companies. So we work with entrepreneurs who might eventually want to be partners with Citi, but we also work with entrepreneurs who are thinking about expanding overseas and using Citi's global footprint to help understand new markets. So it really kind of runs the gamut, but it's all aimed at how do we bring in that outside thinking, outside diverse perspective back into the bank.
And Citi Ventures' portfolio right now is pretty broad. You have e-commerce investments, machine learning, data analytics. So how would you really describe the portfolio strategy here? And is it shifting?
Sure. Not shifting very much, actually. We've been at this for a while, but the portfolio strategy at Citi Ventures is aimed at both infrastructure type investments, so think things like cybersecurity, right? Incredibly important to the safety and soundness of the financial institution that we run and all financial institutions, or machine learning and data, but also more and more fintech, commerce, payments, which we've been in for some time, though obviously has seen an explosion over the last several years.
So what do you think you have on the typical Silicon Valley VCs, like a Benchmark or a Sequoia or an Andreessen Horowitz?
So what's great about working in VC at a place like Citi is that we can really leverage the 206-year-old history of the company and help these entrepreneurs build their businesses, right? Having been in the Valley for decades, right, this is all about what can you bring to the startup that helps them scale, that helps them reach new markets, reach new consumers. For many fintech startups, distribution is a big challenge, right? They have a great idea, but how do they get out to more people? So I think there's a place for all different kinds of investors in the ecosystem. What we find is that we try and work with our companies to not only help them grow but help them learn to navigate working with a large, complex organization. It's not easy to know who to go to, who makes the decisions, or frankly, even when to go in. We sometimes think of it almost like someone guiding you up a mountain. It's not enough to just say, when you get to the top, talk to Selena. Someone's got to tell you, which trail, what time of year, or who to talk to. And we do a lot of that at Citi Ventures to help our entrepreneurs meet their success.
And as a big global bank, Citi's obviously in a very unique position, and a lot of these fintechs are targeting some aspect of traditional banks, whether that's payments or lending. So how are you looking at the threat that these fintechs pose?
At Citi Ventures, we don't think of it as a threat. The way that we think about it is that what's really posing the change in retail banking and banking overall is changes in technology, which is affecting every industry, and changes in customer expectations. And what that does is it opens up all sorts of opportunities for new players to come in and see if they can do something better, for incumbent players to say, wow, there's an expectation of a customer that I didn't know about before. Well, how do I do a better job to meet that? And I think what you've seen over the last several years is not just fintechs coming in, but incumbent banks and fintechs working oftentimes together to meet those evolving expectations of our clients.
Now, we've heard this time and again from the heads of the big banks, whether it's Lloyd Blankfein or Brian Moynihan, talking about how Bitcoin is volatile. Jamie Dimon said it's a fraud. He tried to take that back. But what is Citi's position on Bitcoin and blockchain as a future technology?
So we've been experimenting with blockchain at Citi for over 5 years now, and I think our stance has always been that it's a very new technology and experimenting is the most important thing. Now, it's easy to say experiment with blockchain. It turns out when you're a big financial institution, you've got to build a lot of internal muscle and internal capability, which we've done not only through Citi Ventures and through our innovation labs at Citi, but also through investments in places like Chain.com that are focused on helping large institutions figure out how to explore use cases for the technology. We don't think that blockchain has any one single use. It's more about exploring multiple ways that it might help us deliver better for our clients.
So what are some of those ways? You mentioned this partnership with Chain. I think a lot of people see blockchain as a panacea for all of banks' problems, but is it more just like another tool in the software suite?
I think you really have to think of it as a tool. So last May, we announced Citi Connect for blockchain, which is something we did in partnership with NASDAQ. I think one thing that's important whenever you're working with blockchain, it's fundamentally a network distributed technology. So it's not something that you can go off to your own conference room and experiment with. And it's one example that we've used of co-creating with our clients. In a world that changes as quickly as our world is changing today, we do not believe at Citi that we can go off and create products and services on our own and keep up with the pace of change. We believe we have to be working with clients, co-creating and figuring out how to bring things to market that meet their pain points. And no doubt over the coming years and decades, we'll all find that there are probably multiple uses of new technologies like blockchain to meet what clients need.
So talk to us about D10X and this effort for internal employees to start companies.
Absolutely. So we believe fervently at Citi in the power of entrepreneurship. We also believe that not all entrepreneurs happen to live in Silicon Valley and work in a garage and have a new idea. We also believe that our employees have great ideas about how to better serve our clients and are passionate about how they can do that. But they need a way to bring those ideas to life. So D10X is an embedded program that Citi Ventures runs at Citi. And it's really focused on creating the opportunity for people to bring forward ideas and to think differently about how those ideas might come to life. I think the critical part of D10X, which we've now been running for over 2 years, is that we can't do this without first validating what our clients need. We used to talk about this as, avoiding building the cannon to kill the flea, right? The old way of coming to market with a new product would be to say, I've got an idea, clients want this, let me go away and write a big PowerPoint and convince my boss's boss to invest a lot of money in it. And at the end, you build this beautiful cannon and you've specified it and you've shined it. And when you're ready to unveil it and cut that ribbon, someone says, I think the flea might have moved. And you can't do anything about it because you've already invested all of this. With D10X, we've turned that completely on its side and said we focus first on what do our clients need, how do we make sure that it's a real pain point, and therefore we're able to learn what they need to kill off a lot of projects that don't meet those needs and really focus on the things that we can bring to market that will make a difference.
And what are your clients' biggest pain points, and how is D10X already addressing that?
Great question, and so diverse, we'd need a whole session to answer it. You know, if you think about from capital markets to retail banking, there are just so many different things that our clients need. But one example is we launched in the fall something called Proximity. So this is a product that came to being at Citi from two people, Dean and John, who worked at Citi for 20 years. They worked in the custody business, and they knew that if you're a shareholder, it's really kind of a pain when you get that proxy statement. You have to vote. You want to vote. You want your voice to be heard. But it's confusing, and there's not very much time to do it. Imagine for an institutional investor who holds hundreds or maybe thousands of positions, it can be a real black box in terms of whether your vote is being counted. So Proximity is real-time transparency into a critical piece of corporate governance, increasingly important not only for corporates but also for investors who might not be activists but who are very interested in what's the agenda at the corporation that they're shareholders in. And it's that kind of thing, launching something like Proximity that helps our clients deal with something that is just difficult to navigate or painful, that's been really exciting to see in D10X.
I just wrote a book about diversity in technology, and one of the most interesting things that I learned is that Wall Street at the top banks is fairly close to 50-50, and you know, women are far better represented than they are in Silicon Valley. I'm curious what diversity is like at Citi Ventures, especially as compared to the typical Silicon Valley venture capital firms, which are run mostly by men.
Yeah, so we take diversity extraordinarily seriously, not just at Citi Ventures, but at Citi overall. We're quite a diverse group at Citi Ventures. We've got male and female investors of different ethnicities. We also, at Citi Ventures, focus on not just who we have in the company today, but what's the next generation. So we launched last fall a program called Cupid, which is all about matching graduate students, university students with innovation projects that are happening at Citi. It's 53% women. Over a third of those people aren't MBAs. They're people from public policy backgrounds or design backgrounds. We think about diversity in gender, ethnicity, but also perspective. You know, who's around the table, not just for the big things that get counted, like percentage of people, but for the everyday conversations where it matters whose voice is there and who's shaping the conversation.
All right, good to hear. Vanessa Colella, thank you so much for joining us, head of Citi Ventures, and our very own Selena Wang.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Airbnb's big announcement that could lead to a more mainstream approach, how the startup plans to take its competition with online travel agencies to the next level. This is Bloomberg. The Federal Communications Commission says it will officially publish its order rolling back Obama-era net neutrality rules in the Federal Register. That's the federal government journal that lists new agency rules, and the move is likely to open a floodgate of legal challenges from parties opposing the changes that empower internet service providers. Already, 22 states and the District of Columbia have joined the legal battle started by Mozilla and Vimeo to reverse the net neutrality repeal. Well, Airbnb is looking to go more mainstream. The company will now highlight hotels, offer new tiers, and add a loyalty program. Airbnb is focusing on becoming a full-service travel firm to better compete with Expedia and Booking Holdings. Cowen analyst Kevin Koppelman and Bloomberg Tech's very own Olivia Zaleski join us now with more on how the company stacks up to the competition. So, Olivia, start us off with what Brian Chesky announced today and, you know, why the company is taking the more mainstream approach.
Well, Brian Chesky made a really big announcement today about his roadmap to make Airbnb for everyone. And what that really means is making Airbnb more like an online travel agency like Booking or Expedia, offering hotel rooms, boutique hotels, and services and amenities that are more hotel-like. And the company is really doing that because it obviously wants to IPO at some point in the next 2 years and really be a formidable opponent, a competitor to these larger corporations.
Kevin, what do you make of this move? Is it the right move?
Well, I think it's important to point out to start that the online vacation rental industry is booming. We estimate that there were 40 billion in bookings last year between the major players, and that'll grow to 80 billion by 2020. And Airbnb is doing very well as the leader within that category. The event today was absolutely the right thing to do. I think that it was all about taking rentals to the next level and driving them to be more mainstream to improve the overall booking experience for their customers and to really just get to that next level of penetration, being already a large company with 20 billion in bookings last year.
So, Olivia, what does it mean for hotels? I mean, is this not great for hotels? Is this new business for hotels?
Well, one important thing to keep in mind is they're not opening themselves to every hotel. They made it pretty clear that they don't feel that large hotel chains, the Marriotts of the world, the Hiltons of the world, are welcome on their site. They're going out to smaller hotels, the boutique hotels, the mom and pop ones, and somewhere in between. And it actually looks very promising for hotels because they're charging such a low commission. About 3 to 5% is what they're saying they'll take from a booking, which is great for the hotels compared to an Expedia or a Booking.com, which takes on average about 17%.
So, Kevin, then what do you think it means for the major hotel chains that this will not include, like Hilton, like Marriott, many of whom, look, if you try to book a room, it's not a seamless process. The user experience is not that great.
Well, I think Olivia's made a really good point here in differentiating what kind of hotels Airbnb has added to the platform. We think that they've made it clear they're positioning themselves against the big hotel chains, and they're really trying to attract boutique hotels. Now, we're looking at their commission rates a little bit differently in that we're looking at their all-in take rate of about 13%. That's Airbnb's. It's still cheaper than what the online travel agents are offering, so that will be attractive. But overall, I would second Olivia's point in that they're going after the boutique hotels here, and they don't appear to be interested in the hotel chain business.
So, going forward, Olivia, how does this impact Airbnb's, future roadmap? As you have reported, there's been a lot of personnel changes at the company. And is this sort of Airbnb starting fresh?
I wouldn't say this is Airbnb starting fresh because this has been in the works for probably years now. The company did go through some executive changes recently. CFO Lawrence Tosi did step down, and I think we might start to see a lot of fallout from that. The company has been under scrutiny from some investors who were pushing the company to go public sooner than perhaps Brian Chesky had wanted. But I mean, this is a company that it's like a rocket ship taking off. Hold on, they're seeing a lot of growth. Users really seem to like them. They come back, and they have 4.5 million listings on their site already, so hotels will just add to that.
All right, Olivia Zaleski of Bloomberg Tech, Cowen analyst Kevin Koppelman, thank you both.
Thanks, Emma.
Coming up, Snap sinks how social media influencer Kylie Jenner wiped $1 billion off the company's value with a single tweet. Next, this is Bloomberg. Snap CEO Evan Spiegel is one of the highest paid executives in the United States. Of 2017, the chief of Snapchat's parent received $638 million, almost all of that in the form of a stock grant Spiegel got when his company went public last March. Sticking with Snap, the company can't seem to keep up with the Kardashians. Kylie Jenner may have added to the social media company's woes with a single tweet. Selena Wang joins us now. So Snap closing down 6%, Selena, after this tweet from Kylie earlier saying, so does anyone else not open Snapchat anymore, or is it just me? Ugh, this is so sad. Is that stock drop entirely because of Kylie Jenner?
It's not entirely because of Kylie. I mean, Snapchat as a stock is already on shaky ground, so any incremental piece of news about troubles on the user experience or user growth is going to cause a significant drop. In fact, we saw this happen last month when I published a story about Twitter coming out with a competing camera product, and that story alone caused its shares to drop 5%. But that being said, Kylie is extremely influential on social media. She has almost 25 million followers followers on Twitter. She's hugely popular on Snapchat. So her saying, I'm over Snapchat, the fear for investors is that that's going to trickle down to all of her millennial followers who will also think Snap is no longer cool.
It's interesting after Snap reported, its first strong quarter ever.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, there was a huge investor reaction to that positive earnings growth, but we have to remember that it was positive earnings because there were incredibly low expectations. Investors have slowly lowered the bar further and further for this company. It's still not profitable. We've been seeing slowing revenue growth, but their user base is still growing at a somewhat steady rate.
What do we know about, growth among younger users and popularity given competition from Instagram and, of course, Facebook, which Facebook proper I know we're not as worried about, but Instagram is really the problem.
Absolutely. When Instagram rolled out their Stories product, there was a significant drop in the amount of usage of Snapchat. There's a lot of anecdotal stories coming out about millennials switching entirely away from Snapchat and onto Instagram because it's offering many of the same services. Another big concern of investors is Snapchat's redesign. Evan Spiegel recognizes that Snapchat is pretty complicated to use, so he's been trying to make it easier. But his attempts to make it easier have caused very intense backlash from his core user base. So the fear is that this won't eventually even rejuvenate user growth.
Quick thoughts on Evan Spiegel's enormous payday?
Well, like many tech CEOs, he decided to reward himself a very large stock grant. Now, this stock amount of about $636 million will be rewarded over the course of several years. In 2020, it was a one-time thing. But again, it's not great for employee morale when the CEO of your company is making this much money and your company is still unprofitable.
All right. Selena Wang, thanks so much of Bloomberg Tech. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. A reminder, we're live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.